Good evening, Danvers. This is Mark Zubrek with the topics of the town news, and this is the March 4th edition. And I'm the co-host. I'm the host, and I have two special guests and co-hosts with me today, Michael Hagan and Keith Lucy. Now, we may also get Jim Morose at a later time because he is busy working. So we are doing the show and moving forward. Now we get into the show and presentation of the news stories. Our format has changed a little bit, and what I like to do is give a introduction of today's presentations. Number one item is going to be the selectmen meeting results and update. Number two will be Danvers School System Committee meetings. Open meeting law violation letter from the Mass Attorney General is be number three. Number four will be Danvers School System investigation and lack of reports. Number five will be Beverly Airport meetings and the master plan that has been presented to the airport and to the Danvers residents. And the last item I have here is national and local coronavirus status, Danvers state and national issues in regards to the coronavirus. So let's move on. And I have a slide presentation. David, if you can put that on. The greatest weapon in our society is not the gun or a bomb. It is the control of information. To control the world's information is to manipulate all the minds that consume it. This is so relevant at this time in our culture, in our nation, in our local community, because this is exactly what we're experiencing. So, Keith, would you like to say something as an introduction? I just want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak today.
Well, I mean, that opening slide you just showed was very relevant on, at least three of the topics we plan on talking about today.
Right.
Right. So.
And that's going to be important to consider as we move on. Michael?
Welcome, Mark. Welcome, Keith. We have a good show ahead, a lot of good information. We've done our homework and we'll proceed from there.
All right. So let's move on with topic number one, recent activities at the Selectmen's meeting, which was held on, it was March 2nd.
Yep.
So what we have, and this is my oversight because this is relevant to what has happened at the Selectmen's meeting, but I came in 2 minutes late at the 5:30 meeting that has been scheduled now. And I had two issues that I wanted to put up on the table as public comments. One of them is, what are the selectmen going to do with the municipal light board and their increases in our bills of $7.50 that has already happened in January, and the customer fee for an unannounced increase? There has been no information disseminated to the public. And what I figured is that we have probably around 10,000 meters in this town. Those are only the residential ones. And if every meter is charged $7.50 as a customer fee, that's almost $1 million that's being collected over 1 year. That does not include the customer fees for the small and large businesses that consume a heck of a lot more electricity, but their rates are lower. So the question I have to the selectmen that I was going to present is why are we increasing the rates, or basically a customer fee, where we're not decreasing the rate itself? Because nothing has changed. All they're doing is basically collecting another $1 million from our residents and our users of electricity. The second item I have on here is, and we'll get to that, is that the Board of Selectmen has not presented or discussed the open meeting law violation that has been received in February. And they had two opportunities at their meetings, and they will not discuss it because this is something that is creeping up into our government, and decisions are made in the back room or on the emails, like this violation stated. I know, and I remember back in when I was on the board, there was always a discussion at Joe Collins's office before the meeting, and everybody agreed on what was going to happen. The other item is an item on our agenda, which is the Beverly Airport. That was an interesting discussion that happened. So let's move on. And I will present those items to the Board of Selectmen at their next meeting. Topics number 2.
Mark, if we could just jump back real quickly to put that in perspective, the electric increase of $750 per month per meter, right? The electric company, right? We have our own municipal electric, and they run about what, a $42 million budget or something like that total. So you might say, it looks as though people are going to look at their electric bill and say, oh, $7.50 on top of, $100, $150, $200, whatever people have. And they won't look at that as that significant of an increase. But what they have to realize is that the $42 million budget for the electric division, about 37 of it simply goes to buy electricity.
Right.
We don't generate our own electricity. So what that leaves is about $6 million of operating expenses that are done within the town of Danvers, the employees at electric division, improvements to the system, and everything else like that, right? So when you look at $1 million increase, it's really a 16% increase in the operating budget of the electric utility. Now, so your questions are exactly right. What are we getting for that? Is there a project coming up that we're all going to benefit from? Is there and why wasn't that done with what they always call retained earnings, right? What are we getting, right, for really a 16% increase in the operating budget for the electric division? What are we getting, right?
Well, Keith, as you know, I have been a hound dog on the municipal light board over the last 3-4 years. The municipal light board, the electric company, right now has over $22 million of cash reserves,
Right, retained earnings.
that have been retained in the bank account.
Right.
In the past 2 years, they have spent over $20 million. 2 times they've spent $5 million on retirement fund. Then there are the lights, the illustrious traffic lights that we have installed on 62 at St. John's Prep. That was a $3 million project. So in addition to what they have retained right now, they have spent $20 million in the past. That whole issue is currently under investigation by the Department of Public Utilities, and they're still asking questions of why those funds were spent on items that are not related to the customers and the supply and distribution of electricity. Michael, what do you got to say about it?
With the spending the money on towards retirement, I think that might have been the brainchild of the former town manager, Wayne Marquis, to help offset, to fully fund retirement system.
Right.
I think that's because we're still not fully funded. I'm a member of the retirement board. Been on there for about 18 years, but we're still not fully funded. If everybody was to retire today, there obviously we'd be bankrupt. But I don't know about anything about the investigation, but I do know that does help offset, the retirement system. It helps fund it, which
Oh,
is
definitely it does.
important.
But the problem is that the users, the customers are being fleeced basically by some of these increases in costs. Now, what they're and I'm being a conspiracy theorist, as you know, in the past. The $1 million that is being asked from the residents is basically to offset the pilot program that has been agreed to. And it used to be in the $750,000 every year. And now what they want to do is they want to recapture that. But my issue is, if you're going to institute this fee, why don't you reduce the rates to compensate for that? Because they've had enough money to deal with, and the retirement fund infusions 2 times for $5 million, so $10 million right there. That was one of the contributors to the AAA bonding that we have received, because that was a execution of that policy. So you're on a retirement board. I mean, is that has contributed to it?
Sure has. I mean, without that, I dare say that the system would be obviously much less funded. I mean, now I was a 5%er when I started in 1974. I paid 5% all the way through. The new kids or the new guys had to get paying 11 plus 2. So they're basically funding the newer group from I don't know how far back. They're basically funding their own retirement. I did not. My 5%, I dare say, probably didn't fund all of mine. But
Right. But that was the deal that was made at that time.
well, that was the law, 5%.
That's right. But the thing is that isn't the retirement system set up pay as you go, as you collect the funds and you pay the retirees at the same time? And there's a schedule of how much is being contributed every year.
Well, the retirement board also has numerous money managers, numerous investments,
Right.
and that makes it,
Makes it viable.
yeah.
Right.
And,
Mark, the last time I looked at those numbers, they would need about a $25 million cash infusion to become fully funded. And so they don't pay. It's not a year thing, Mark. They have by now at least $85-90 million on hand, the retirement board, and that's what that's the buffer, right? That says we'll never we can always pay this year and next year and the year after, right? And the struggle is now, what about 2035, 2036, 2037? And it's about these small adjustments like Mike made, making the employees pay more. But then it's also finding more sources of money. And if this is where this rate increase is going, not rate increase, but if this is where this fee increase is going to, right, then someone on the Board of Selectmen needs to ask the question, who generates the highest number of retirees in the retirement system, right? If it is electric light, then maybe they need to be paying more for their retirement, right? If it's not electric light, then what's happening here is that electric users are funding the retirement,
right?
But for the rest of the town, and that we know we're all three old enough to remember when that was done before, and there was a pushback, not from the Board of Selectmen at the time, but from the DPU that said you can't use the electric light division as your piggy bank, right? You can't just arbitrarily choose an amount of money to assign as a pilot fee, right? You're limited, and you have to justify that. And there was pushback, and they were right. And so the town manager at the time was limited into what they could bill
Right.
the electric light division. Now, the trouble is in our system of government where the electric light utility director reports to the town manager, and the town manager wants money out of that department. Guess what happens?
There you go. All right.
So,
That's
but Mark, this is where we rely on the Board of Selectmen, and that's the next piece of item number one is Mr. Clark leaving, which I still don't believe until the day after nomination papers are due. I put anything by him. I've worked with him long enough that I don't believe anything that comes out of his mouth. Because it'll be the first thing he's ever done as a member of the Board of Selectmen that is in the best interest of the residents of the town of Danvers, will be for him to leave the Board of Selectmen. But everything else he's ever done has been in the best interest of Bill Clark and the Clark family. But my point would be that if that's going to actually happen, then the candidate that can best represent themselves as to have the ability to politely push back. And the key in 2021 is the polite, right? The polite pushback to say, is this really the right thing? Is this really the right idea? And methods that used in the past don't work in 2021, right? You can't be rude, you can't be abrupt, you have to be polite. And so that's the candidate that's going to be best suited to fill those empty shoes. Or should I say that empty suit?
Ooh.
Doesn't the water also offset retirement? Isn't it
Well,
water and electric?
to a degree, right? And so, Mike, if they were proposing a $7.50 basically hookup fee, or not hookup fee, but a billing fee, right, out of water, it's the same idea. So really, Mark, it's time to follow the money. Where's that $1 million going, right? And that's what it does work out to be. Your math is correct. 750 times 10,000 meters is $75,000 a month. Times 12 months is almost $1 million. So when you dump that into a budget that's not that large, when you take out purchase power, what are we getting for that? You know.
Well, the issue that struck me as being very relevant at the not the last selectmen's meeting, but the one before that in February, is that all of a sudden the Board of Selectmen latched on to the fact that the small business users were going to get an increase in their fees as well. You know, the consumer fee that they were going to have. That because it affected the two selectmen that were discussing this issue personally. But who cares about the residents? Nobody seems to care about the fee that was imposed on the residents. This has to go back to the municipal light board, and it has to be reconsidered. And I am going to ask the Board of Selectmen to do that, because the town manager is the manager of the municipal light board, and he just does whatever he wants. That's enough for that issue. So Mike, you have anything?
Nope.
All right, let's move on. What we're going to do is we're going to combine item number 2, which is the Danvers School System Committee meetings, and the Danvers School investigation and lack of reports. What I had on the school committee meeting was there was a public hearing held at the last meeting, and it was total ignorance of the residents that are paying these taxes. There was a public hearing held, and nobody from the public was even allowed to get on to the show. So they discussed it. They made all kinds of requests. The budget went up by 2.9%. But where are the savings from what happened last year? Last year was a non-education year. And where are the savings? Where are these people? They're getting paid. Everybody's getting paid. So, what I'm concerned about is that this is another item that makes the school committee very suspect of what they're doing. Their education has not improved. The remote learning is not working. Everyone I talk to has said that the remote learning, maybe 60%, 70% of the kids get on the computer, the rest just ignore it. So we're losing a whole year, and we have not devised a proper plan to get these kids back into the schools. So the other item that has been very evident is that we have a situation that has been developing in town since August of accusations and investigations of what's going on with the school system. The kids have come out, and what I have put up, David, if you can put up I finally realized that people are prisoners of their phones. That's why they are called cell phones. So they're in the cell. This is what happened. The schools have reacted, or the students have reacted to a situation that has developed over the last summer where there were many, many accusations and investigations happening. So the next slide, David, would be very appropriate at this time, because what I have dug up is I miss the good old days. Remember when you could actually have an opinion without offending somebody. So the results of the accusations and the reports that have been prepared by the school department but never shared with the public are hiding some information or some issues that have not been divulged to the general public, the taxpayers of this town. Maybe there are some reservations in regard to names, but nobody wants the names. They need to know what the issues were and how they were being solved. So, official investigations reports have been prepared and presented to the school committee, but the general public has no issue, no idea of what those reports say. So I've placed a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, for the two reports that have been prepared. One of them is for the police department, the police chief report, and the other one is for the report that was done for the school committee by Miss, I don't have her name here now, but
An outside law firm.
that's it. And what happened is I have submitted that request, and I received a reply yesterday, 10 days on the money, just like it's supposed to go. But it was basically denied because what they have come up with is they want a $550 fee for someone to go through the emails and the reports to eliminate the names and some of ideas. I don't know what I'm going to get, but this is something that we need to expose for the public. School officials in Danvers did not reveal specifics of the investigation, but alluded to discriminatory behavior, while students say some classmates have routinely used racial language. Okay, what was all that about? Why didn't the schools control that situation? A number of current and former students of Danvers High School have reached out to us recently to report communications among certain students that were contrary to our mission to provide an inclusive school environment free from discrimination. That is a very serious statement. So I have received my reply. I am going to return the FOIA request for the reports only. And I hope that the town can share that with the rest of the residents in town. Keith, what do you think?
Well, in terms of the FOIA request, Mark, I find it interesting that your FOIA request, technically it wasn't denied, Mark. They simply asked, they tried to impose a $550 fee as a way to say, okay, fine. Well, you want all that info? We're going to charge you for it. Even though these are public documents, right? We're going to charge you to get it for you. And I just find it interesting that your rejection comes just after the Attorney General ruled on my open meeting violation accusation from last fall. I did 3 or maybe 4 Freedom of Information Act requests regarding the thin blue line issue last fall, and not one of them were rejected, and not one of them involved any fee, right? And I think what's happened here, Mark, is they've learned the lesson of deny all information because it can only get you in trouble. What's the phrase? In the Miranda rights? You have the right to remain silent, and anything you do can and will be used against you. They know that. And they're reserving their right to remain silent because they know anything they provide can and will be used against them. Just like the report showed clearly that the Honorable Mr. Mills, right, wasn't so honorable. That his intent was clear. He intended to communicate with the other board members, and he did so individually to avoid the appearance of an open meeting violation. But that's in fact exactly what it was, an open meeting violation. Now, Mark, I was accused of many things when I was on the Board of Selectmen, and so were you.
That's right.
Neither one of us was ever accused of an open meeting violation, which to me, isn't that the most sacred bond, the most sacred trust, right? Open meeting, right?
What you're supposed to adhere to because you are a public figure that makes decisions for the rest of the town.
And if you can't justify what's in those emails, what's in those decisions, what backs up what you're doing, then that needs to be exposed. And so what's going on here, Mark, is obstruct at every turn, deny at every opportunity, because anything they give you will be turned around and used against them. And they know that now, and they would just demonstrate that with the Attorney General. This is not me accusing them now. The Attorney General confirmed that what Mr. Mills did was in fact an open meeting violation. And the Board of Selectmen doesn't even have the courtesy
to discuss it,
to acknowledge it.
Yep.
And say, we apologize. We're going to take proactive steps to make sure it doesn't happen going forward. And that goes right directly to what you talked about with the school committee, Mark. If there was accusations thrown, people's lives were changed by those accusations, right? And we live in a world now where, again, Mike, what is it? Are you innocent until proven guilty?
That's right.
Now you're guilty until not proven either way. You're just guilty. And so you're just guilty. Once someone slings something at you, it sticks and you're guilty. I've been accused of plenty of things that people think I'm guilty of.
Well, see, Keith, the thing that really got under my skin in regards to the open meeting law violation is that we as an organization or a group were called all kinds of names, even at the selectmen's meeting, that we were not real. We were just there for, publicity.
It was called a false false outrage or something, I think.
That's right.
Yeah,
And this was done by the selectmen board,
yeah,
specifically by one selectman. He made a big deal out of it. And the thing is that the meetings that they have held have been used to manipulate what the proposals were at the town meeting, special town meeting. And basically,
Right.
our integrity was questioned all the way through. And
Right.
even Judge Doug Bean felt very, very offended by those comments, and the integrity was questioned. And
Well, he's much more articulate than you and I. But back to the school committee, if they don't publicly, acknowledge the accusations, specific accusations, and without names, and specific actions that were taken if something inappropriate was found, or acknowledging an exoneration if no wrongdoing was found. That's what we're looking for, Mark, right? We're looking for, was something wrong? If the answer is yes, what have you done about it? If the answer is no, nothing inappropriate was found, then acknowledge that as well.
but also
And allow the accused to be exonerated.
absolutely, and that's where it needs to happen. And because there are people that are involved in this, whether they're students, teachers, coaches, or whatever, the superintendent and the school committee needs to address that, because if the facts are not known to the residents, how can Danvers improve the situation for them?
Exactly.
The one thing that I got from this one article that I was reading, the investigation has concluded and there
Yes.
have been consequences according to the letter sent to the school community. But school officials won't reveal the specific allegations, how many students were involved, and what kind of disciplinary action has been taken. So it's not a very good situation, because as I stated in the last show that we had, is that we're sweeping this stuff under the rug, and this is the Danvers School Committee way, and this is the Danvers Selectmen way. And I
Okay.
hate
So
to
Mark,
say-
that reminded me of something that will bring my background to light. SpaceX has been incredible in developing really way ahead of its time. Rocket engines, reusable rocket engines, command modules, everything, right? Just this past week, they had a crash. They had an explosion, right? Something went wrong. Elon Musk is the first to say you learn the most from your mistakes. And every time something blows up, they go back and figure out why. Every time, right, they something doesn't go exactly as planned, right? They go back and figure out why, whether it was catastrophic or not. But they go and they learn from it, and they improve, right? By acknowledging it, finding out what caused it, and avoiding that problem in the future. What the school committee is doing, and the board of selectmen is doing by not acknowledging their mistakes, is they're failing to learn from them. They're failing to improve, right? So it's the complete opposite of what's going on at SpaceX and what's going on at NASA today, which is why engineers love, right, continuous improvement. Whoops, that didn't work. Let's figure out a different way. This isn't working in the school department. Kids are leaving there. One of them was so to the point, Mark. One of the things you'd sent me was, and I won't mention names. It just said, underclassmen are having fights in the hall and starting fires. The only people getting in trouble are the good, honest kids who are struggling with their grades or mental health.
That's right.
Right. This is a high school kid. I happen to know him. Right. Wow. And that's by the way. And then to really come full circle, those are the kids that are most vulnerable, that are going to be most impacted by this coronavirus. You know, there's really three sets of kids, right? The kids are going to succeed no matter where you put them, right? I remember when this first came down, this homeschooling of this remote learning. I talked to a buddy of mine, kids in the public system, and said, "What do you think?" He goes, "Keith, we were never going to let the public school system dictate our child's education." Right? In other words, like, no, that's the minimum they're going to do. They're going to do much more than that because him and his wife were going to make sure of it, right? Then there's the kids that, like it or not, no matter what, they're going to struggle. They're not going to succeed. And by the way, the school committee, their own report last week identified about 20% of them are not going to be proficient in math by the time they're in grade. And then you have this middle group, Mark, right? The middle group that struggles, but they struggle and they try and they work hard, right? And now you put them remote and they're going to fail.
That's right. Or the fourth version is that the parents will take them out, either do homeschooling or go to a private school where the teachers are actually working.
I put them, Mark, into group one, right?
Yeah,
Right?
they're going to succeed.
But I'm saying there is this middle group where the parents are trying, the kids are trying, and they just can't get it, you know, with the normal learning.
Right.
That's right. What they call, you know, they considered regular ed, right? Going remote hits them the hardest.
Yeah.
And that's who's going to fall behind. That top group of kids whose parents can afford private school, whose parents can afford tutors, whose parents are going to be on them every day of the week, making sure their homework is done. They're probably unaffected.
Yeah.
It's that middle group.
David, if you can put back the Miss Good Old Days, that is so appropriate right now, because what is happening is that the kids remember when you could actually have an opinion without offending somebody. That is so key right now, because everybody wants everybody else to be politically correct, courteous, and decisive in their education and in their behavior in the schools. But you cannot avoid offending someone, but we cannot legislate to the minority. So let's move on. Michael, you have anything on this?
Yeah, when we were talking about the open meeting violation, which was very clear, the ruling came down so eloquently given by Keith about the results, which were nothing. The person that violated the open meeting law, excuse me one second. The person that violated the open meeting law, he doesn't like the open meeting law. The open meeting law was our biggest opponent when we went before them. And I've gone before more than my share of judges and groups in my time. And I knew right off the bat, just like you see now, that you're speaking to no one. I know when we were appearing before the a commission in Boston in 2004 regarding allegations of the police union being on strike. When we went before the hearing officer, and Keith was there, you could tell that the people were listening. The people that were in charge and deciding the facts were listening. I didn't see that at any of the meetings that we went to. Nobody was listening. It was all charade. It was all just sit back, yeah, next, you know.
Yep.
And like I say, there's no punishment. But on the other hand, if they're complaining about loud motorcycles, they want something done about motorcycles. I mean, you can't have it both ways. The law is the law. Either do it the right way or don't do it at all.
That's right. So, Keith, anything else in conclusion of this subject? Because I'm going to continue my FOIA request, and I'm going to go for the two reports. I think the public needs to see those.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I would suggest that. And I mean, your request was no more comprehensive than what I asked for. Like I said before, and they've now learned that it's better to give nothing than give them incriminating evidence. And that's what the new town hall mantra is, right?
Yep.
Mark, I did see one thing you should be encouraged about. Says, should you wish to narrow the scope of this request via more targeted search terms and or a reduced time period, the town would be happy to recalculate a good faith fee estimate accordingly. Perfect.
I've already forwarded an email to our town clerk asking that forget about the emails for now. Let's get the reports and then we'll go after the emails.
Yep.
I just wonder about, well, hopefully it'll be released, the investigation. I'm not sure about the police investigation, but the people do want to know, need to know, but they could just drag it out.
Oh, they're trying, they're doing it, but we'll pursue it. I don't give up, you know that.
President Kennedy got assassinated in '63, and we're still trying to figure it out, right?
I know. All right, so now that we have concluded this issue, let's go to topic number 5, Beverly Airport meetings and the master plan. Just as an introduction, I went to the selectmen's meeting at Holton Richmond, which was, what was it, Tuesday, the 2nd of March, which was this week. However, there was such a turnout in regards to the airport that they had to split the group into 2. There were over 50 people that wanted to speak about the Beverly Airport and the noise levels and the congestion that they are experiencing in their neighborhoods. So I volunteered to stay in the library because they had a TV set up, a remote, TV screen. And we watched the comments that have been presented by the first 25 people that went into the meeting. And I don't understand what the heck the 25 limit is, because that room is much, much bigger than 25 people. Maybe they should have removed some of the selectmen out of that room, so let people say what they wanted to say. But
Well, Mark, they could have done that, because just like Mike mentioned and just like you discussed, right? There was no one. Those 25 people that made comments, and then the follow-on group, they were talking to a wall.
Yeah.
There was no one on that board listening to them. The only one that might have been listening was the town clerk, if she was collecting their name and address for the minutes. But in terms of the 5 selectmen, not one of them, perhaps, Maureen Bernard may have been concerned. I know for a fact that, Mr. Clark has already punched out. The other 3 are either airport advocates, active advocates, or they don't care. And so it goes right back to what Mike just said about them listening. There was no one there listening. And I really don't understand it, because they don't represent, one selectman will always harken back to the days when he was a
airport commissioner. Yep.
And when he would say that, I would acknowledge by saying, yeah, you're right. He was, when you were an airport commissioner, you were an airport commissioner. You're no longer an airport commissioner, because what he used to always say was, when I was an airport commissioner, the interest of the airport was first and foremost, not the interest of the town of Danvers, even though he was a Danvers rep. But now that's past history. Now he's a member of the Danvers Board of Selectmen, but he still
Continues.
advocates for the airport for some reason. And what, I got several phone calls before last night's meeting, and I just kept telling everybody, well, see if you can find someone that's going to do the work for you, right? See if you can get a sponsor from the Board of Selectmen that will be the lead polite pushback to the Beverly Airport, right? Okay, they want, our not consent, but they want our not our permission, but they want, I guess, consent to say this is the plan. Well, what improvements does that result in for the residents of the town of Danvers? Any, right? I mean, the line is always, well, you moved in next to an airport, right? But I didn't move in next to Logan Airport.
Right.
And people that moved into that neighborhood 50 years ago could never imagined what has grown into today. And Mark, earlier when you talked about 737's landing, maybe not in Beverly yet, but guess what? Amazon is opening a new facility right over in North Andover, right next to the Lawrence Airport. Guess what? There's not going to be any space for recreational pilots anymore at Lawrence Airport. They're all going to come to Danvers. They're all going to come to Beverly. And so what you're seeing in the air today, even if there isn't any jets in the air, the Amazon jets at Lawrence are going to force the traffic at Beverly to go up. And this is not the airport they moved in next to, right?
Well, the findings of research has basically documented the noise levels, because there is a noise abatement program that was instituted by Robert Mazzetti when he was the airport manager. And that was in 2006. And that has been thrown down into the garbage can. Nobody abides by it.
It was irrelevant because remember, it was all just suggestions, right?
Right. And the thing is that there were noise sensitive areas identified. But the problem I see is that the airport commissioners, supposedly the airport manager, it's not the commissioners. The commissioners didn't do anything on this master plan. The airport manager has been basically presented a opportunity to get $20 million from the FAA and the Mass Aeronautics Commission to improve and expand the runways at the Beverly Airport. The whole master plan is geared to use that money to extend the length of the runway, because they just paved all the runways down there. And now they're looking for improved number of flights. The one thing that caught my eye is that this airport is now considered as an overflow for Logan for the small planes. And that's where they're going to be landing, whether it's there or Lawrence. And what I noticed, and I remember 20 years ago, I used to travel out of Manchester, New Hampshire. Manchester, New Hampshire was a one runway, one little terminal, and we used to take jets out of there to Florida or to the East Coast. Look at Manchester now. Manchester has grown to a level where it is approaching a small commercial airport for the New Hampshire area, basically. And that has happened over 20 years. This airport, again, is being expanded to increase the number of flights, because that's the only way they make any money is when the planes land and take off. And the thing is that this airport has been a menace for 25, 30 years. There have been examples of their ignoring the neighbors, and the good neighbor policy has been thrown away. There's a noise abatement policy that I found, and that was very self-explanatory. the one item that I see on this policy is commercial planes whose activities include charters, tours, aerial photography, aerial advertising, power line inspections, traffic reporting, and fish spotting. Those are the biplanes or single engine planes that are operating. But there's also a military, the U.S. Coast Guard helicopters are stationed there. Uh, this is no longer a regional um, airport that the general public can use as recreation. So after the meeting, I sat down with several individuals, and then we had a second round of questions for the presentations and questions to the Board of Selectmen. And I was very disappointed by the Board of Selectmen because there was no interest in solving this issue, whether it's through government action, state action, or federal action. The two representatives, the state senator and the representative, basically came up and became cheerleaders for the airport, basically. That's what I heard. We need to get attention of the FAA in the federal government, and that may be set molten. So that's the next step. But this will continue. There's a meeting scheduled in April. I think it's April 26th. That's going to conclude the comment period, and we'll see what they incorporate and what they don't. Keith?
I wasn't at the meeting, Mark, but I watched it, and they had checked out on the people. I mean, the people, was it supposed to be a feeling where people could actually, I think people went there with good intentions, thinking that they were going to be heard, and these people that represent them understand, and they're going to help them. And It was just next, just like our here, next.
Yep.
Thank you. Next. And it's just like everything else. If there is nobody there, if it's an issue where nobody can tell somebody what to do in the room, then they just sit back and say, hey, all
Right. It's like the old joke, I won't repeat it, but, sometimes the best thing you do is let them finish, right? They just, and that's the new, they sit there, they lean back in their chairs, they unplug. And, Mark, you're so funny when you say you were disappointed by the Board of Selectmen. Mark, if your dog, your bird, you have a bird, I know. If you asked your bird to do calculus, would you be disappointed if your bird couldn't do calculus?
I bet you the bird could do calculus after I teach it.
No, I bet you it couldn't, right? And that's the Board of Selectmen with these things. And there's two reasons why your bird can't do calculus, Mark. Your bird can't do calculus because your bird can't do calculus. And your second reason is the bird doesn't care about calculus, right? And that's what Mike was talking about just now too. That they check out. They know they've been down. Well, that's one of the problems, by the way, with members of this Board of Selectmen being entrenched for 15 years, right? Before someone gets a conscience to say, shit, I haven't done anything for 15 years. Maybe it's time for me to go. Maybe the others need to do that. And the next two have been on there since, the next one, 15 years.
Right.
The other one's 14 years.
Mills is about 8.
Right. Mills is 8, correct? Right. And so, Mills was checked out the day he joined. But the other 3, 15 years, they've heard it all. Right? They've heard it all. And they just lean back and they unplug and go, we know how this rodeo ends. So just don't make a noise. Let them finish. They'll be done in a minute and then move on.
And they'll go away.
One of the funny things too, Mark, I watched the very tail end of the meeting because you in doing show prep. Dan Bennett has been doing this since 2007. He still doesn't understand even how to end a meeting. He just says, we're adjourned.
Yeah.
Right? There was no motion to adjourn. There was no vote to adjourn. Dan Bennett just declares that we're adjourned. It's those simple things that shows you they don't care about the rules. They don't care about the public. They just care about sitting in those seats for as long as they can sit in those seats because they pretend that the town can't run the same without them. It's really unfortunate that they can't clear out and let someone else do the job.
Well, just to follow up on your comment right now, I have looked into the people that have volunteered for election for the Board of Selectmen and the school committee. And basically, right now, there's a open seat with another one that's not very secure, but he's been there for 15 years. And now we have four candidates, because I have thrown my name in there as well. I don't know if it's even worth doing that, because that Board of Selectmen is asleep at the switch anyway. So I know the drill. I've been there, you've been there. And the thing is that it takes a lot of work to get anything done. The school committee is in the same situation. The incumbents haven't even taken out papers. Mr. Thompson and Mary Beth Berry have not taken out papers yet. So that may be an opportunity for somebody to go in and shake up the school committee, because the school committee is not performing the job that they have been elected to do.
You know, Mark, when you talk about this stuff, your point is right on, like Keith. But these people, it's a prime example of everything else that takes place in society everywhere. People think they have a voice. They go there, good intentions. These people are going to help us. They're talking to nobody, but they go home and they do the same thing. They talk about it at work. They talk about it to their buddy. Nobody takes the initiative to get a group together to say, this has to stop. You know, the Vietnam War would still be going if people hadn't said enough is enough. But people complain about their taxes. I have relatives complain about their taxes. I said, have you ever called a selectman? You ever call a town meeting member?
Right.
No. Then that's what they're doing. These people got slapped. They went home, and they probably won't ever go to a meeting again. They thought they were going to be heard. They weren't.
Well, I'll tell you one thing is, this was the first time, or one of the times, that I was proud to see all the people that came out for the airport. But the thing is, where are they going to be next meeting? Where are they
Mark,
going to be during the airport commission meeting?
Mark, we've watched this show over and over.
Right.
There'll be 50 at the first meeting, and then we should get more input then. And then there'll be 20 at the second meeting, and then there'll be 5 at the next meeting, and then there'll be none at the next meeting, and then they'll take the vote. Right?
Right.
Mark, that's how this has gone for as long as I've been involved in Danvers politics.
And why do they allow 25 only?
Right?
Well, that was their restriction for COVID.
For the room.
Like the president.
But my point is, Mark, there's this big flash, right? And yeah, they all come running down. We're gonna, and then there's a little fewer and a little fewer, and people despise me, and a lot of people don't like you, Mark, believe it or not, right?
I know that.
But they'll always say, but geez, you put in a lot of work. Yeah. And I want to tell them, yeah, because you don't, right?
Because you care.
On there, right? You and I wouldn't have to be the bad guy all the time. I got a phone call real quickly asking me to be on the finance committee, effectively because they needed a skunk at their lawn party. They needed someone to push back, and not one of them was willing to be that skunk. I said, thanks, no thanks. Right? I'm not going to be the skunk.
All right. What we're going to do is we're going to skip item number 5.
Yeah. Anyways.
I want to give you an opportunity to say final comments, and just to announce that the next news broadcast of this show is going to be on March 18th, 2021. So, Keith, you got 1 minute or less.
Well, great show, Mark. I mean, a lot of good topics. I hope there's some follow-up between now and the 18th.
Thank you. David, can you put down the last picture? And Mike, what's your last comment?
Looking forward to the next show. If I'm invited back, we'll do more homework and let's try to keep it going here.
And my last comment is the town hall is still